Hello and welcome to the Lantern podcast series, where today we're going to be discussing the impact AI can have on workplace safety. When it comes to workplace safety and risk management, the stakes couldn't be higher. But what if you could use AI to move from simply reacting to safety incidents to actually predicting and preventing them? In this series, we're exploring exactly that, how the convergence of data and AI is completely transforming safety and risk outcomes across industries. I'm your host, Terry Smith with Lantern. We are a highly specialized data and AI consulting firm focused on helping organizations AI enable their businesses on the Microsoft platform. Joining me today is my co-host, Jim Nystrom. Hi, Jim.
Hey, Terry, thanks for having me. I'm with GuidePoint Solutions. I'm a technology advisory firm, and we partner closely with Lantern to bridge the gap between cutting edge technology and real world applications. Our focus is on helping organizations take these AI capabilities and translate them into actionable, measurable improvements for safety and risk mitigation.
Thanks, Jim. And we have a great conversation lined up today with our guest, Brian Bartal. Brian is the Chief Safety Officer at Unifi, which is North America's largest aviation services provider. And at Unifi, Brian has led a strategic initiative to build the aviation industry's most advanced predictive safety solution. It's a solution that leverages real-time data to assess risk that leaders can use to take prescriptive actions they need to stop safety incidents before they happen. Brian, it's great to have you with us.
Terry, good to see you again. Jim, nice to meet you.
Same.
So we have the privilege of partnering with you, Brian, on some groundbreaking work at Unifi, specifically around moving from more traditional safety measures to truly a predictive model for safety risk. So for our listeners who may be not familiar with the scale of Unifi's operations, could you set the stage for us and tell us about what the safety landscape looked like before you started this journey, and then tell us a bit about the AI safety solution that we've implemented together?
Sure. Terry, Unifi is a comprehensive aviation services provider. We're currently operating in 5 countries with around 45,000 employees, providing services for airlines and also airports. We do a lot of high touch type of work. So we're working directly with passengers. We're handling a lot of baggage. We're moving a lot of cargo and doing a lot of physical work as well in and around very expensive and sensitive assets.
Very interesting, Brian. Thanks for that. I heard in the project from Terry when we were talking earlier that the company really moved from like lagging indicators into leading indicators in order to help with some safety precautions and kind of advanced warning. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Jim. So really there's 2 challenges that face our industry. Of course, our top priority is the safety of our employees and also the safety of the aircraft that we're servicing. And especially when it comes to the aircraft, we need to ensure that the aircraft are always in an airworthy condition. And we need to ensure that we're extremely sensitive to that as we operate equipment, especially large equipment around the aircraft on the ground. There's just not an opportunity to compromise in safety. What we were able to do partnering with Lantern is to leverage a holistic data set of relevant data sources that really are key contributing factors to incidents that we face in our environment. And we were able to pull together data from our HR systems, our financial systems, our asset management systems, and as well as our safety systems. We've imported data such as weather data, temperature, precipitation, all of these relevant factors that we're really able to kind of pull together and leverage machine learning algorithms to help us make predictions on where we would see risk in our business based on where incidents have occurred previously.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So besides the data space or just the data piece, what are some of the top challenges that you face from a safety standpoint? You mentioned the aircraft safety and the employee safety. But what are some of the incidents, if you can refer to any of them, that
Sure.
are the top 3 things you want to avoid, or the top 3 things you want to be careful of in the future to improve safety and risk management?
Yeah, so in our space, if you're familiar from a risk mitigation perspective with the hierarchy of controls, It starts out with the basic control, getting employees into personal prevention equipment, so PPE. And then you have administrative controls, and then you'll have substitution controls, you'll have engineering controls. And then ideally, what you're trying to work towards is a complete elimination of risk. Unfortunately, we end up in a lot of situations where we mitigate risk to the lowest level possible, and then we manage that risk. And so, really for us, it was about leveraging the data to understand the environments in which those controls are most likely to break down or to fail. And so when you think about the data that we're bringing in, when we're looking at employee experience levels, training hour investment, preventative maintenance into those pieces of equipment, and then also we're looking at the leaders who are out there in the operations supervising this process. What is their experience level? What is their tenure? And then what's going on with the weather? Do we have icing conditions where equipment could slide? So all of these factors kind of come together, and they all have an important impact on our success of being able to operate this equipment and move employees around aircraft. And so kind of bringing all of this data together to make a prediction about what the risk level is in that operation is a summary of the work that we've done partnering with Lantern. Our model does an incredible job helping us see that risk and eliminate the likelihood of contacting an aircraft or injuring an employee in those processes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's certainly a complex and high pressure environment, it seems, Brian. And I imagine the lines can get blurred on who's responsible for what from a safety perspective. So I'm curious, when it comes to the day-to-day operations at a specific station at an airport, who truly owns safety? Is it driven by that station manager? Is it a top-down mandate from Brian's office, or does accountability really sit with each individual that's working on that particular station or that tarmac, for example?
As a ground service provider, I mean, ultimately we have accountability for ensuring the safety of the aircraft. But in an airport ecosystem, especially some of our larger, more complex environments, there are a lot of partners, there are a lot of carriers, there's airport personnel, there's just a lot of moving pieces and a lot of stakeholders. And it's so important to empower every one of our employees to take responsibility for safety. And so they're all empowered to call a safety stop at every opportunity. You know, with 45,000 employees, we have 45,000 opportunities for somebody to make an error or a mistake. You know, we're humans, and human factors are a huge basis for risk in our industry. But we also have 45,000 opportunities for somebody to call a safety stop and do the right thing. And really, what our model does is it lets us know where the likelihood is that, you know, maybe somebody's not going to call that safety stop. And if we know that in advance and we can further prepare the groundwork to ensure a successful environment, then we do that and we see better results.
So you've got people, process, technology, and data that's all part of this, you know, process or the landscape, if you will. And then on top of it, you have the demands of the airlines that probably want to turn around airplanes as quick as possible while being safe. So you're constantly balancing that need for operational speed, getting planes out on time with the rigorous safety protocols that you have in place. Kind of sounds like a high wire act, but I guess, you know, when you get in the rhythm of things, I can imagine the employees are excited about an airplane coming in, doing the processes that have to occur to unload and then reload the airplane and sending it back out and moving on to the next one. But despite all those challenges that you have of the operational excellence and the safety protocols and the employees, you know, training and site leaders and potentially employee turnover, you have moved the needle significantly. So shifting gears to the positive side of things, looking back on your tenure and the work that the team has done, what are you most proud of from a safety perspective at Unifi?
Over the last 3 years, we've seen continuous improvement in our reduction in aircraft damages. And that's significant for us because when you look at a policy in our line of work, you're looking at around, you know, $500,000 deductibles. It's not like your $300 automobile policy. And a scratch is significant. A scratch on your bumper when you're parallel parking is nothing. A scratch on a pressurized aircraft means everything. And so, 3 consecutive years of aircraft ground damage reductions by our organization. I'm proud of that. I'm proud that last year alone in 2025, we saw a 36% reduction in aircraft ground damages across our network. When it comes to our people, our number one resource, our number one asset in this environment, our people are what makes this work happen. Our injury rates, our experience modification rate, for example, over the last 3 years is down 30%. Just tremendous. And not only is that impact on real people and the lives of individuals, but also the business and, quite frankly, the bottom line. When individuals are out of work and we have to backfill those individuals, it's costing us overtime. When those individuals are unable to return to work, again, not only is there the impact on the individual, but then also we need to hire and retrain somebody else. And this is somebody else coming in without that experience and that knowledge that prior individual had. These are real dollars, not just stats that we celebrate in a performance review, but especially on the employee side. Again, sending our employees home safe every day is a top priority, and the fact that we continue to improve and to do better and to negatively impact less employees, so proud of that at Unifi.
Congratulations.
Yeah, those reductions and the improvements you've made around safety is certainly a massive achievement, Brian. It really speaks, I think, to the culture you've built around safety. I loved how you said you've got 45,000 employees, and that's 45,000 opportunities to make a safety stop or make a call, right? And I think that getting thousands of employees to buy into that vision is no small feat. So kudos to you on that. And obviously technology is becoming a force multiplier in our world, and that I think can help sustain that culture as you guys continue to grow and scale. And we've talked about the predictive work you've already done, but if you take a step back and you look at the broader technology landscape and just the pace of innovation that we're seeing with AI, how do you think AI is going to further change how your organization thinks about its safety processes and the outcomes moving forward? Are we looking at more automation through agents? Is it some type of better training or something else? How are we thinking about that?
Yeah, I think we're already starting to see some benefits now, just early benefits. Training is definitely going to be more impactful, looking for ways that we can not only ensure that people have trained, but that they truly understand that training, that the comprehension level is there and thorough understanding. I think there's going to be some great AI tools that are going to support that aspect as well. I think, VR has been really exciting. I think there will continue to be evolutions in that space that will give individuals more enhanced learning and training experiences. What we're working on now is in the form of some just simple chat bots, much like, Chat GPT, but referencing the content and material that's important for our business. Previously, you could go to a supervisor, you needed to find a supervisor and seek one out to maybe ask a question or get some guidance or advice. And supervisors, believe me, are still going to be tremendously relevant with AI, but it's going to be much more enhanced in that employees will be able to get really great, accurate responses to a lot of their questions using a bot that's able to sort through a whole myriad of complex manuals that have procedures and process guides and explanations. Employees will be able to just ask the bots very simple questions, and the bot will then pull in those responses. It saves times. It lets the supervisors operate more efficiently. But the chatbot technology that we're looking at has advanced to a level where it's really kind of a bit of a wingman or a companion to support you in your decision making and also answer seeking. So as you're working with the employees, maybe you do have all the answers.
Yeah, I love what you've said there. And you've obviously built something very enviable here, because safety, from what I'm hearing from you, is the responsibility of the frontline worker all the way to the executive leadership within the company and everything that they touch all around. And the fact that you're blending the use of technology and AI along with site leaders and supervisors with frontline employees, I think what I'm hearing from you is AI is not the total answer, and you still need to have a blended approach to training and supervision and operational excellence.
Yep.
But AI is starting to help you. The data and the AI is starting to help you see things that you haven't been able to see in the past. And with some of the virtual reality training and the chatbot type stuff that you talked about, really helps to reinforce for the employee that they're understanding what they're being taught and they have a real world way to apply it, maybe before actually getting out into the field. So that all being said, if you were advising another peer in your industry, like let's say you went to a safety conference and you were talking to somebody in manufacturing or construction, and they really are admiring what it is you've accomplished, what's kind of the blueprint? Like, how did you get started? And what kind of tweaks did you have to make along the way in order to make sure that the data was aligned, the culture was aligned, and you were finding the right technology partner in order to bring this in? Because you're in aviation industry and your ideal world is not focused on the technology and AI. So it sounds to me like with Lantern, you reached out and found them as a partner to help you bring in not necessarily leading edge technology, but the right technology to help take you incremental steps while blending the other operational pieces to it. So like, what would your advice be for someone else that you might be talking to at a conference?
I'm going to give a shout out to my colleague and partner, Sandeep Angra, our Chief Technology Officer, because I joined Unifi about 6 years ago at a point where we were transitioning from a wholly owned subsidiary to a commercial enterprise. And Sandeep joined shortly before me and really had the foresight to align the data architecture of all of our systems and to move that data to the cloud. So we're a Microsoft shop. We use Azure. And all of our data from all of our various systems, from what I use in safety and SMS and the daily kind of safety compliance world to what we use from HR, everything flows into our cloud environment, and that architecture is aligned across the business. And it was that work that laid the foundation for us to be able to build such a complex model. So when we partnered with Lantern, we essentially had, I don't know, Terry, probably 80% of what we wanted at the time. I think we needed a few solutions. Right. I think we used Snowflake to kind of import and bring in some additional data, some real-time weather and departures and some other data sources that we had to pull together for this to work. I think the key is to get your data into kind of an aligned location, regardless of what cloud source you choose or how you choose to do that. And as I've talked with other businesses, I think that that is the biggest hurdle. We all use so many systems and so many tools. You've got to start figuring out how to get that aligned and synced up. And so, yeah, really kudos out to my colleague Sandeep, who was thinking long-term, big picture, and did that. And so I think it made what I was dreaming of a possibility, and it enabled Lantern to help us choose the right algorithms to bring together for both our predictive and then later we layered in a prescriptive model to not only predict where we had risk, but then also to prescribe the types of actions that would mitigate the most amount of risk and prioritizing those actions. And so you've really got to do a lot of work up on the front end. Once that work is done, though, I mean, the opportunities are just endless. Again, as we look at bots and other solutions, we've got all of this information together that we can now link up with other sources as well, such as our documentation libraries. And it really sets the stage for some powerful tools and resources.
Yeah, that's great. And I totally agree. When I think about the success of this solution, there's a couple things. One is having centralized data together. You have that unified data platform that really allowed us to tap into that as we started to look at AI solutions to build on top of that to really get insights. And then I think the other thing, to give you some credit, is it took in addition to having the technology partner like Lantern, it really took a good business partner like you that was close to the business and you knew your operations well. And we wouldn't have been able to go from the predictive model to the prescriptive model without you really telling us, hey, if this risk exists, here's the levers I can pull to help mitigate that. And so I think that's really what helped us go to kind of that final prescriptive step in that process. And I know for us, it's exciting to see the shift of This safety being a rearview mirror exercise where you're looking back at kind of what happened yesterday to more of a heads up display where you're able to actually start to predict what might happen tomorrow, and in this case, 7 to 10 days into the future. So that was kind of fun to see that come to fruition. Kind of based on that, as you look at what's next, as you look at your horizon, your roadmap for the next 12 to 24 months, what are some of the top safety priorities for you in Unifi?
Yeah, we're going to continue to invest in our people. Our frontline employees, again, are absolutely the secret sauce to making all the work that we do happen. And so, despite the best of what AI has to offer, the best of what data has to offer, we need these employees. And so, it's all about helping them realize what the resources and tools are that are available, how to best use those tools. Speed, speed is absolutely critical for us. And I'm not talking about the speed of an aircraft turn and working quickly around an airplane. That is a finely synchronized event. But the speed that I'm talking about is our ability to leverage the outputs of, for example, our predictive analytics dashboard to take the right actions before risk happens. And so while we've been extremely successful in the reductions that I spoke to earlier, there have still been opportunities where we've received the information on the dashboard, but we're always questioning ourselves, what else should we have done? How else could we have moved quicker on this? How else could we have better have leveraged the information that we had ahead of time before an incident occurred? And I think lastly, in our industry, probably like most industries, I mean, continuous improvement is just so important. It's just continuously iterating on what's working right, reevaluating what's not working, reassessing, changing course when necessary, and continuing to drive performance. At the end of the day, we can't compromise on the airworthiness of aircraft, and we have to do a better job keeping our employees safe.
Thank you for that, Brian. I had to go on mute for a minute because a low-flying aircraft just came over my office here. So I was like, well, that's appropriate. But
we don't fly them, so it wasn't us.
I understand. Yeah, I know. They're coming to you. They're coming to an airport by you. Thanks for this incredible look under the hood. I'm very impressed and very happy to see that you put the lives of the 45,000 employees at the top of the priority list, and that you recognize that in order for them to come back tomorrow, they need to go home safely today. And part of that is training, and you're really thinking ahead about how do we continually improve our safety measures so that we have a greater possibility of those employees returning back tomorrow after they finish their job today. So thank you for tying in the data and the AI into the physical safety with this level of sophistication. And thank you very much for joining us today and sharing a little bit about your story. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
enjoyed being here.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. And for our listeners, if you want to see the deep dive on how Unifi built this predictive solution, you can see the full case studies on our website at lanternstudios.com. Thanks again, Brian.
Thank you.